Okay, we'll go ahead and get started for tonight's webinar. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this event for the Becoming a Bobcat webinar, where we will get to explore more about our chemistry and biochemistry majors. My name is MJ Jimenez, and I am with the Office of Admission at UC Merced. Just a friendly reminder that tonight's session will be recorded in case anyone wants to rewatch it later on. Just feel free to check our UC Merced websites. For anyone who has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function throughout this presentation, as we will try our best to get most of your questions answered. I will go ahead and hand it off to Christine, who will be starting us off for tonight's webinar.
Hi, everyone. I'm Professor Christine Isborn. I'm also the chair of the Chemistry and Biochemistry department. I teach the upper division quantum chemistry class and try to solve all the different problems that come up in the department. Today we have two other faculty members, four current students and one former student, to tell you about the chemistry and biochemistry major and what we have at UC Merced. So I'll turn it over to Aurora for introductions.
Okay, I'll unmute this time. Okay. Hi, I'm Associate Professor Aurora Preebram Jones, and I teach kind of across the curriculum. So for undergrads, I teach the first semester of general chemistry as well as the honors section of the first semester of general chemistry. I've taught the upper division quantum mechanics class, and I've also taught the upper division thermodynamics and chemical kinetics class, and then I teach some graduate courses as well. My research is, I'm a theoretical chemist, and so I write down things like the quantum mechanics and physics and math that underlie how electrons behave in the centers of giant planets and in inertial confinement fusion capsules. And I guess now we'll pass it along to Rebecca Arevalo.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So my name is Professor Rebecca Arevalo. I'm an assistant professor. I started at UC Merced in 2020. So my field of expertise is organic and inorganic chemistry. I typically teach upper division inorganic chemistry. And for graduate course, I do organometallic chemistry, which is kind of in between organic and inorganic chemistry. And for my research, I work in homogeneous catalysis using transition metals in the periodic table. And we are mainly trying to discover new sustainable methods. It's also connected to green chemistry. And I guess I should handle it back to Christine.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to have the students introduce themselves. I've asked them to say what year they are or what year they graduated, current job if they have one, and one good thing about their experience at UC Merced. So David, why don't you start?
Hi, so my name's David. I'm currently a fourth year chem major. I'm set to graduate this spring. Right now, I'm working as a learning assistant for preparatory chem and general chemistry 1, as well as a tutor at the Chem Center. And one good thing about my UC Merced experience is that I feel like the small class sizes really allow you to meet the professors a lot and really get to know the people in your class as well.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Carolyn. I'm a third-year student here at UC Merced, and I currently work as a student employee of the team that puts on the lower division chemistry experiments. So that's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. And one good thing about my experience at UC Merced has been the support and guidance from mentors, and so that's my professors or staff members I've worked with. So I do appreciate the patience and the investment that the faculty members put in students.
Hello, I'm Alex. I'm a third year chemistry major. I'm a learning assistant for preparatory chemistry and Gen Chem 1 and Chem 2. One thing I like about UC Merced is there's so many clubs on campus. You're gonna find something you like and you can dive into it and you can make new friends that way. And if there isn't a club you like, you can very easily make your own club.
Hello, everyone. My name is Juan. I'm a first year chemistry major. I currently work as a chemistry learning assistant for Gen Chem 1. And something I really enjoy about UC Merced, it's kind of similar to what Alex said. I really love the community here. There's definitely a place for everyone. There's many different kind of communities here, and that's my favorite part.
Hey, I'm Stephania. I graduated back in 2022. I am now a fourth year graduate student at the University of Chicago, where I study biophysics, which I know is different from chemistry, but I swear it was all part of the process. I think that's probably one of the best things about UC Merced was the fact that like I did have this freedom to explore and find out what I wanted to do, and a lot of that is due to the support that I had from like professors. Like I took Dr. or like Professor Revelo's inorganic organometallics class, which was excellent, and Dr. PJ was my advisor for a year. So definitely their support throughout everything was like one of the best things about my UC Merced experience.
Great. And so we're going to share just a few slides with everyone and talk a little bit about the program and ways that we've tried to help students succeed here at UC Merced, both in and out of the classroom. And then there'll be Q&A at the end, but you can also put questions that you have in the chat as well. All right. So anyone who knows me knows I talk about my cats in the classroom. It's a running theme where I give you updates. So cats appear prominently in our slides here. But I just want to outline, in case anyone is wondering, chemistry is considered the central science that connects to biology, to physics, to materials. It's the mathematical and physical principles that tell you about how atoms and molecules work. And we develop this molecular level understanding to understand all these other kinds of larger scale systems. And then biochemistry is the chemistry that's foundational to what we do in modern medicine and how we understand biology at the scale of atoms to molecules. All right. I talked about this. I'll put the cat up here and let Aurora take it from here. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, so to continue on with what Professor Isborn was saying is, there are lots of ways to do chemistry, and there are lots of reasons that people go into chemistry in their undergraduate education. Some of us come in knowing that we really love chemistry and biochemistry already, and that's a great reason to be a chemist, pretty obviously, right? But you might just know that you love science or you're looking for a good STEM major. And because of what Christine was saying earlier about chemistry being the central science, it's a great place to sort of get started in STEM. If you're not really sure where you think you might end up, it gives you a lot of skills that connect to lots of other technical fields, whether that's physics, even math. I've had people move into math. I've had people move into engineering, biology, right? I mean, you hear about Estefania moving into biophysics in graduate school. So if you know you want to do science, but you're not sure which, chemistry is a really good choice. You might also be worried just about getting a job, right? That's the reality for a lot of us is why we start coming to college is thinking about employment. And there are real skills that you can use and get hired for straight out of college. Or if you are looking to go on to graduate or professional school, it gives you a lot of skills that you can use while you're still getting your education at higher levels as well. And if you're really not sure what you want to do yet, it's also a really good place, partly because of the community that some of the students talked about that we have in chemistry and biochem. But it also is the kind of major that gets you working on a lot of different good lower division coursework. And so you're able to sort of jump in where you find the thing that you love, which is another part of doing an undergraduate degree, is that you get to explore a little bit. And it's okay to not know for sure. But if you're not sure, sometimes chemistry is a really nice way to kind of keep your options open.
To me.
Yes.
Chemistry, we have been talking about chemistry for a couple of slides, but chemistry is a big word. So you really need to think about what that word means. And so it's a really broad discipline and it encompasses many, many different areas. So one thing that we have in common as chemists is that, yes, we think about atoms, we think about molecules, and we think about they interact to try to understand experimental facts and to try to develop hypotheses and to try to develop new methods to understand the reality and to solve problems. But the way we think about these problems is slightly different depending on what type of chemistry we are talking about. So actually the word chemistry needs a last name that defines what a specific area in chemistry we are talking about. So chemistry finds applications from biology to physics, and it is the way that connects to these two other disciplines what defines chemistry. Chemistry is really the science that, as Professor Ismond mentioned, chemistry being the central science, what that means is that it provides fundamentals to many other disciplines, in particular biology and physics. So when chemistry interacts with biology, we are going to be finding fields in chemistry like biochemistry or organic chemistry or even inorganic chemistry. So these fields of chemistry are going to find applications, for example, in medicines, in drug discovery. So every time you guys take a drug, there is a big research behind that drug where chemistry had a lot to say and where chemistry was solving a problem. The way chemistry interacts with physics, for example. So that is key to understand the matter, to understand materials, for example, to understand how to create new materials that are capable, for example, of allow us to make new vehicles to go to the moon, right? So we need materials that survive really extreme conditions, and chemistry is behind that. The way, for example, chemistry interacts with engineering. So that is related to materials chemistry. So in these fields of chemistry, we explore what materials can do. So if you think about batteries, that's, for example, a field where chemistry has a lot to say as well. Chemistry can also interact with environmental science. So when we think about green chemistry, when we think about developing more sustainable processes to, for example, make a drug, or when we think about CO2 remediation, the problem of pollution, those are all fields where chemistry is providing a lot of solutions. And chemistry is also interacting with computer science. And so Professor Isbon and Professor Pibram-Jones can tell you a lot about computational chemistry. And so computational chemistry is allowing us to rationalize experimental facts, but also to predict, for example, properties of molecules before we make those molecules in the lab. So whatever problem you are handling, whatever problem you need to solve, chemistry has a lot to say, and it's the base for solving that problem.
Biochemistry is a major we've just launched this year at UC Merced, so it's getting going. We didn't have it before. It's one of our newest majors. And so you can think of this as a great primer for any of the different medical directions you might want to go into as a student, where you're really using, a lot of different chemical techniques to analyze biological systems. And so it really combines the sort of molecular biology aspects with studying the protein structure and function that goes into what's going on at the biological level. And so I will now kind of just give an overview of the courses that are involved for both the chemistry and the biochemistry major. They start out very similar. So in year 1 and year 2, you're pretty much doing the same coursework for the two majors. You're taking your introductory level biology, your introductory level chemistry, introductory level physics. What's a little bit different is you take a little bit more bio for the biochemistry major, and you take a little bit more math for the chemistry major, because those math 23 and 24, those are the fundamentals that you need to take some of your upper division chemistry required classes. So what's shown on this slide in dark blue are all the classes that are similar for the two majors, and then we're highlighting in yellow the classes that are just for the biochem major, and then in light blue that are just for the chem major. A lot of people will kind of fluidly go back and forth while they figure out exactly where they want to be, but there's a lot of overlap in the first 2 years. And then when you get to upper division after your first 2 years, that's where you start to specialize more. So there's a common set of classes, inorganic chemistry and biochemistry and some synthetic lab being the ones that both majors take. And then after that, if you're in a chemistry major, you'll be taking some of the advanced physical chemistry classes and labs. And if you're a biochemistry major, you have a specialized biochemistry class that replaces those and goes into a lot of those concepts applied to biological systems. And then you take a biochemistry lab that teaches you those hands-on biochemistry lab techniques that you would need. And so they branch off at different places. And you also have different electives that you get to choose for both majors. So in the biochemistry major, your electives will be from the biology program. And then in the chemistry major, they could be chem electives, but they could also be in the engineering or physics. And there's a little bit more flexibility. They can, of course, also be some of the bio classes as well, depending on what they are. So that's our general courses. And then on this slide, I want to highlight the ways that UC Merced really sets students up for success. So there's a list of points here, but I'm going to go through each of them. And for each point, I'm going to allow everyone to kind of chime in and say maybe how that particular point, how they're involved with it. Because I know a lot of both the students and the faculty really kind of intersect with each of these here. So a lot of the faculty are using active learning and problem solving during their class sessions. So for example, the students, 3 of them have been in my class. They know I'm using clicker questions. I'm making them get together in groups and work on worksheets. But does anyone else want to chime in of what they do in their classes or what they found were effective techniques that they used or that they had in their classes at UC Merced?
Yeah, so what I'm doing in both upper division in organic chemistry and for the first time this year in the graduate organometallic chemistry is doing a flipped classroom model. So what that means is that I provide the students with all the slides, with all the theory they need to know to solve problems. And then the lectures are mostly focused on guiding the students solving these problems. And I have a data-driven approach to do that. So what I do is I extract real data from publications or from textbooks by real data collected by chemists, sorry, by different experimental techniques. And I present that data to the students. And so what we do in class is we try to propose hypotheses and we try to rationalize that data based on the theory that they have learned in the slides. And so I have found the students enjoy this way of approaching the courses a lot. It helps them to really focus on what the content for the course is. And they have been commenting that they are able to perform much better in the exams. But maybe David can comment a little bit on his experience in my organometallic chemistry this semester.
Yeah, I actually love like the whole problem solving thing. I think it makes you really think about it because most of the time in class we're introduced to something new, and then it really makes you like kind of think more of the chemical behavior instead of just following like a really strict kind of like regimen. And I think for me it feels really good when you finally like see, oh, that's how it works, and you kind of put things together.
Yeah, and that's how real science works, right? It's what I always tell you in class, guys. We have experimental evidence. It's not like we need to predict things. We do have experimental data that we collect through different techniques. And so our goal is to develop theories to understand that experimental data. And so that will help us to predict and to solve problems. So I think that's a more realistic approach to at least to the fields that I teach, which are both experimental.
I can speak a little bit about general chemistry here, like for my honors class and for the honors contract, which is a way you can have sort of special interaction with a professor in a larger class in order to get honors credit for taking that's a special contract you make, an agreement you make with the professor to try to replicate some of the experience of being in an honors class, even for a larger class. But in both of those experiences, students will do things like doing actual computational chemistry simulations themselves through a web interface on a real supercomputer at MIT and calculate things like molecular orbitals and do quantum mechanics together in groups. And then you design your own hypothesis about how you think the different things that you're controlling in those simulations controls what you see in the end. And you figure out how you would test those hypotheses. And I think that kind of group work and thinking about how to work together helps students know they're not alone in some of their struggles. Like I see that there's a question about math and whether you have to be good at math already coming in. And math is a big part of chemistry, but it's one area where we have a lot of support. And so I think working in groups and then having lots of connection with TAs and LAs helps our students not see that as a barrier, but really just an opportunity to learn. And so whether it's a flipped classroom model like some of the classes in the upper division and some of the lower division, or if you're having these extra activities that help you figure out how you can actually use problem solving to sort of prop up the parts of math that you're still needing to learn and practice more. I think that helps students feel more connected to the material. But I mean, some people here have had that. They may disagree with me, but I think that that's the motivation for me and having some of that. Because we would do board work and things, having students do problems at the board and present to their peers in the Chem 2H class. And I think learning to seeing who's good at explaining is not always the people that are the most comfortable with math already. Sometimes the people who are best at explaining how to do a problem are the ones that had to struggle with the problem and get through it. So you kind of learn each other's strengths that way.
I'd like to add on to that because I was in Dr. Pribram Jones' two honors class last semester, and the board work is honestly something. When she first introduced it, it was a little scary because you have to get in front of the class. But it really did help because you learn better when you're like explaining to other students, and you just being able to like think out loud helps you find like how to approach a problem. Yeah, the board work is something I'm just like really grateful for that we actually like did in the honors class. It's something that I do as a learning assistant now. It's just really engaging and it helps like both the student and the people that you're presenting to.
At UC Merced, we have Chem 1, which is a preparatory chemistry class. So there's a placement exam for students coming in that helps determine if they're prepared to enter into the regular general chemistry sequence. And they can enter into that or place into Chem 1. And so Chem 1 is designed to increase your problem solving skills and get you familiar with chemistry concepts so that you can succeed in the general chemistry courses that are a bit more challenging. And so we've got students here who have taken Chem 1 or are currently learning assistants in the Chem 1 class. So I'd love to hear from you on how you see Chem 1 preparing our students to succeed here.
I'm in LA for Chem 1. Chem 1 prepares you for regular Chem 1 because you get a cheat sheet. So it doesn't dive in too deep to the concepts. You get a cheat sheet, so you don't really have to memorize anything. You can memorize the concepts and not formulas that you need. Something like Vesper theory, like it's given to you. You don't need to know how it works yet. So it just puts up sort of like a skeletal structure of what you need to know for Chem 2.
To kind of add on to what Alice was saying, I think for a lot of students, you don't have to be really introduced to chemistry in high school. So going into your freshman year, if it's a lot to just be thrown all into Gen Chem 1. So Prep Chem, I think, lets you really kind of get a brief introduction because you're not familiar with like you are like with math or anything like that. So you're kind of really starting from a fundamental level. And I think it helps you build up your foundation to go on and do Chem or Gen Chem 1 and more classes strong.
And so next here are discussion sections. So pretty much all the lower division and some of the upper division classes have discussion sections. So you have your main lecture that's a bit bigger and then discussion sections where you might have a learning assistant or a teaching assistant in the class with you. You might be taking quizzes in there, but that's your time to kind of dig in and really work through more of the material in depth in a way that you might not get to in your regular lectures. So lectures are usually 2 or 3 days a week, and then the discussion section is 1 day a week where you're getting more in-depth information. And we've been talking a lot, I'll go to the next point here, about learning assistants, LAs. I think this is something that's pretty unique to UC Merced. And we've got 3 amazing LAs here. And I want them to just talk about a little bit about what they do day to day with helping students succeed in their classes. What do they do as LAs? So I'm going to let each of them chime in and explain a bit about that.
I can go ahead and start us off. So as a learning assistant, well, the point of a learning assistant isn't to like, give the student the answer, but to actually like show them, the process and the steps you take to like think or how to think about chemistry. I'm a learning assistant for the discussion sections for Gen Chem 1. And honestly, it's like it's kind of hard to like ask questions in a room with like 300 people. So that's why it's great to have learning assistants and discussions where, you can have more time to like ask questions as a student to learning assistants. And, sometimes I do like go up on the board and like go through a problem for like a lot of those students who are, stuck on where to even start because it can be a little stressful at times. But the learning assistant is kind of like a mediator. They're easier to approach because they are students themselves, they're your peers. But yeah, they're such a great like resource here on campus for chemistry, especially. And they also have learning assistants for like math and bio, and I think physics as well. But assistants are everywhere, and I like that's one of my favorite parts of UC Merced, because I'm taking a lot of like lower division classes where learning assistants are more common, and I've just really enjoyed classes with learning assistants and being one.
So day to day, usually just while we're doing like a active learning, like problem solving kind of session, we'd walk around the classroom and make sure that any students who we go out of our way to ask students if they have any questions. A lot of the time, people are afraid to raise their hand. And in terms of just classroom coverage, the professor can't be everywhere at once. So when you have a class of 200 plus people, a lot of people just aren't going to be helped. And as learning assistants, it's kind of our job to help fill in that coverage and help out students as they ask for it. Lecture and discussion as well. Where we kind of do the same thing, but in a smaller, more personal setting, I suppose, where there's a lot more people to help out the students. Much better ratio.
I'm just gonna agree with Juan. Our job as learning assistants is to meet the student where they are and explain whatever concept they're trying to learn, but just simplify it a whole lot.
I was a learning assistant for organic chemistry like the first semester. And I agree with everything that everyone else has said, but I also think something that was like satisfying and fulfilling for me as a learning assistant, and I think also for the other students is, or at least the energy I try to bring, is that like I really tried or like hoped to try and make it more fun for everyone, especially for organic chemistry. I feel like everyone is scared of organic chemistry, but I actually thought it was like one of the more fun chemistry classes. And so I really tried to just bring that attitude. And I think it helped some people.
Awesome. Yeah, right. So the learning assistants are current students who are in the classes, in the discussion sections, and some of them also have office hours. So you have learning assistant office hours, you have your teaching assistant, these are current grad students, their office hours, and then your instructor office hours. So you have all these different hours. You're going to find one that works with your schedule so that someone can help you when you have questions. And then we also have a STEM tutoring hub on campus that offers peer tutoring in chemistry, math, and physics. So David, do you want to offer any kind of comments about that? Obviously, it's got a lot of overlap with what you're doing already as a learning assistant. It's just in a different forum.
Yeah, so at the Chem Center, I'm pretty sure a tutor there for most chemistries almost every single day from like 9 to 5. So if you ever have any questions with any kind of chemistry, all the way up to, I believe, probably Chem 100 at the minimum, or sorry, OChem 2, um, everyone's willing to help you there. If you just go in from anywhere 9 to 5, Monday through Thursday, as it is right now, uh, it's a nice way to kind of get a more one-on-one setting as opposed to like in the classroom where you might have a bunch of other people around you.
And then lastly, because our upper division classes are small, a lot of students will form that special connection with their instructors at that point if they haven't already in some of their lower division classes. And a lot of them will approach those instructors about getting involved with research. So all the faculty here do research with undergrads. And sets them up to go on and do something else and gives them an in-depth learning experience. And so Carolyn, I see, is actually in my research lab right now. I can tell from what's going on in the whiteboard behind her. So maybe she can chime in on what that experience has been like so far, just as she's just now getting started. And then other people can also talk about how research helps enhance their learning experience at UC Merced and then what that leads to afterwards. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Isborn. I think research looks really different for different students depending on the field of chemistry that they work in. And the amount of hours that they dedicate a week to undergraduate research is determined by them and with their instructor, with their mentor. Um, Typically, the way undergraduate research works at UC Merced is that there's a professor who has graduate students who they are already mentoring, and each of those graduate students has a research project that they're working on. As an undergraduate student, doing undergraduate research is like an apprenticeship where you're working most closely with the graduate student whose research project you're contributing to. So you're having an opportunity to learn about the science, and you're also actually solving real problems that are going to contribute to that research project. So if you work in a wet lab, like I know some folks who work in Professor Arevallo's research group, you get a lot of experience applying the techniques that you learn in your lab courses into doing actual research, and you learn new ones too. You have access to new instruments, and it is very transferable to any kind of discipline that you'll end up working in the future. And then if you work in like a computational group like my own, it's a lot of reading papers, but then you get access to some pretty high-tech stuff. Like I work with the school's high performance computing cluster, and so I get to submit these calculations where I know like the theory behind it, but there's just no way you're doing that on pencil and paper. And so you use this like mega computer that the school offers, and it does the calculations for you. So undergraduate research can look like a lot of different things, but it's a highly valuable part of the undergraduate experience.
Can I say just one other thing about undergrad research? I don't know if we're going to move on after this, but I've been involved with a lot of programs for undergraduates doing research, and sometimes you even get to do things like go travel to do your research. So I've helped run some of these summer research programs. My students have gone to work in Australia for the whole summer, working with physical metallurgists in Australia, and other undergraduate researchers in experiment or in computation developing lead-free brasses for plumbing applications, and they get paid to do that, and their housing is paid and their travel is paid. So that's a pretty significant shift from their daily lives at UC Merced. And we've also had folks who from all different kinds of majors have gone to do laser physics and fusion research with people at Colorado State, Lawrence Berkeley, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And again, getting paid and having their housing paid to do these research experiences for undergraduates. And I think, you know, the vast majority of students who have been in my lab, some of them started in their freshman year, and they've gone on to do other things that are pretty amazing at graduate school, like Steph and other folks. And I think, you know, undergraduate research really was sustaining for me as an undergrad. And so I think it can really give you a way to, yeah, build your new skills, but also help you be remember why you're doing the hard work that you have to do to get a bachelor's degree, because it's fun and exciting in a different way. And it can lead to these sort of almost like study abroad experiences if you get experience early. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, in my field, I think it also gives you like a perspective of reality of this is the real chemistry. Like when you write down a reaction in the whiteboard and you write down molecules, you see atoms and molecules, but you don't see the real thing. And then you go into the lab and you see the yellow solution or you see the green solution and you see the color changes and you see how that looks like in reality. And you see it's real and you start like visualizing those molecules that you have in your flask in your mind. And so, and you know what's in there. And I think that that's the magic, kind of behind research, especially undergrad research. And I also think it gives you the opportunity to interact with graduate students who are people who are preparing themselves to become scientists. And I think that's a highly valuable experience as well, to just see how they think, see how they live, see how they interact with professors, how they interact between them, how they discuss science every day. I think that's a really valuable perspective for you as undergrads. And so I just wanted to briefly comment on one thing Caroline was mentioned about the projects in undergraduate research. So this highly they're dependent on your advisor, but sometimes you may have your own project. And I have had undergraduate students, sorry, who have had their own projects. So it's not only contributing to the project of a graduate student, but if you are interested in a particular problem and your advisor has experience in that problem and is able to guide you to solve that problem, you may have your own independent projects.
So I was actually fortunate enough that during my time in undergrad at UC Merced, I had 3 undergraduate research experiences where my first one was doing computational chemistry in Dr. PJ's lab, which was an incredible experience because I mean, granted, it was also COVID, so like I was just so grateful that I had something else to do with my time. But it was really cool to just like be able to like run these simulations and see how like the energetics of like a small molecule were changing. So it was like so interesting to finally see like, oh my gosh, this is what they're talking about in Gen Chem all the time about how like the energetics of molecules change. So that in itself was like very fun. And then I was lucky enough to get to go to do a summer research experience. I did an REU at the University of Chicago, which is where I am now. And that's when I was exposed to like experimental research for the first time. And I realized that I actually do prefer being in a wet lab. And so I was very sad to leave Dr. PJ's lab, but I did feel like being in a wet lab was more for me. That was also my first introduction into biophysics. I applied for a material research, like summer research program, and I was put in this biophysics lab instead. But I'm grateful for being in it because I thought that was like really awesome because I got to do something like I didn't even know about biophysics, but it was like, of course, there's biophysics. That's like the intersection of chemistry. It's just chemistry, like another word, except I'm not synthesizing molecules. But uh, I get to do like protein and chemistry and stuff. Anyway, and then I came back to UC Merced and I got to work in Dr. Shahar Sakanik's lab, who's no longer at UC Merced, unfortunately, but he was like an excellent mentor as well. I still reach out every now and then. He helped write like a letter of rec for a grant that I had to apply to recently. Um, so I like that's also been something that's really valuable. Like the professors will keep in touch with. Like I kept in touch with Dr. PJ over the years as well. Uh, and I was fortunate enough to be like paid for all of these summer positions. When I went to Chicago, they paid for the flight, they paid for the hotel that I stayed in, um, the food. I got like a stipend, and that was all very wonderful. Um, and yeah, just to like sort of re-say what other people have said. When I worked with Dr. PJ, basically it was like me and like Dr. PJ working on this project where I'd be like, I did this thing, and then what do you think it means? But when I was in like um, Dr. Sakanik's lab, I was under the mentorship of a graduate student, and it was like me and him were like primarily in contact, and that was super beneficial because he told me about like his experience in grad school. But I think the other thing is like if you end up not wanting to go to grad school, like grad students know, especially now as I am one, we know a lot about like sort of what the other jobs are as well, because we're looking at other people take those jobs. So they're also just a great resource in terms of like, what do you want to do later? It's great experience for jobs and everything. And it's also just super satisfying to finally see concepts that you're learning in class and get to apply them in like a context where something new is happening and it's like very exciting. Um, so yeah, that's that was my experience.
Awesome. Okay, I've got our last slide here. And so this one focuses a little bit more on the social aspect of what's going on at UC Merced in the different chemistry and biochemistry clubs.
Yeah, so like Professor Isborn says, like what goes on in the chemistry community outside the classroom. And so I'm speaking here as a representative of the Chemistry Society. That's an undergraduate club that is the home for all kinds of chemistry students and non-chemistry students, people who just like chemistry. And in my role within that club is I'm the community outreach chair. So I do a lot of reaching out to other nonprofits who are out there in the community and asking, hey, are you taking any volunteers to do anything, or developing programs that seek to connect faculty members with undergraduate students, and so that in a forum in which they can talk about their research and the field of chemistry they work in. So, for example, last semester, we were really proud to offer a speaker series in which actually all three of the faculty members who are here at our webinar were able to talk a little bit about the research that they do and the fields that they work in to first-year students and the rest of our members. On this slide, I'll stop talking about Chemistry Society for a little bit and point out that there are other chemical sciences student organizations on campus. The other very large club is ASBMB. That's the local chapter of the national organization, the American Society for Biochemistry and Molecular Biology. So whereas the Chemistry Society is kind of 50-50 social events and kind of just for fun events, and then professional development, ASBMB is very focused on professional development. Recently they sent about, I think, 10 students to their national conference in, I forget what state it is, but they paid for their students to go for free and present on the research that they do as an undergraduate. And conferences are very valuable experiences for undergraduates to like any other experiential learning experience, like see how what they're learning about in their courses is applied in real research. The only issue is that they can be expensive, and so having clubs cover students to attend conferences is a very valuable thing. Speaking now for Chemistry Society, last semester we were able to pay for 4 students to attend a more local conference. It was in San Jose. It was a conference by the National American Chemical Society, and the group that we sponsored was pretty diverse. We had 2 biology students, 1 chemistry student, and 1 applied math student. Those are just I've talked a little bit about 2 of our clubs here, but there are others. For example, NAVACHE, which is the National Organization for the Professional Advancement of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers. And also not pictured on this slide, there's a new chemical engineering club, because there's a chemical engineering club that launched a major that launched in a different department. So that's a high-level overview of the clubs that we have here on campus. I do also want to point out that one project that we're very proud of, Chemistry Society is very proud of, that we've been working on this last semester, is developing a peer mentor program. So if you choose to become a chemistry or biochemistry major, then you can apply to have a one-on-one mentorship with a 3rd or 4th-year student. This program was designed with input from other faculty members and from the department chair. And we're really excited about addressing this issue of the first year being very hard for students. Not only are they transitioning to maybe a new town and having to take care of a lot of responsibilities that they didn't have to when they were high school students, the classes are also just harder. And having a mentor who's checking in on you, who's sharing resources with you is a very valuable thing. So that's a high-level overview of our chemistry and biochemistry clubs at UC Merced, but I'll leave it at that.
And so that's all we have in our presentation. And so there's just a little bit of time left, and I think that we can try to answer any questions that have been put in the Q&A.
I see that somebody's asking about
Oh, okay.
Overlap
between chemistry and chemical engineering communities. The chemical engineering is another brand new major, and so there's overlapping courses, but then sort of they will diverge after the first 2 years. So first couple years they'll be overlapping. There'll be some extra engineering classes, but then there'll be some overlap of the main required courses, and then when they get to upper division is when things will separate. And some of the classes will overlap though.
I think also the communities, though, they tend to you bond a lot in your lower division classes, especially if you take some of the honors classes that are smaller. And so I see folks in different majors hanging out that met in my 2H class, for instance, in their junior and senior year. So even though that your classes might diverge as your majors go away, I think you do kind of bond um, from being in, especially labs, right? Like if you're in labs together, there's a lot of time that you spend together. So even though you might have slightly different schedules at the end, I think there's a lot of community building I think that'll probably happen. I mean, it's still new, right? Like this chemical engineering overlap, but if it's anything like the other sort of chem-ish STEM majors and chemists, I think there'll be some overlap in the communities. I think the clubs will help too, right? Because food and activities and talks and right, you end up bonding and seeing each other that way.
Yeah, and one of our officers for the Chemistry Society, Dellison, who's our treasurer, is a chemical engineering major. So there is a lot of overlap in that respect.
Well, there are a lot of questions about neuroscience, but I don't know that much about the neuroscience.
I think the biochem, you'd be taking a lot of the same classes, but then that would diverge more at the upper division level. We don't have any chemistry faculty doing neuroscience research, so you'd probably be like chemistry or biochemistry major, but then you'd try to get extra research experience and maybe choose that as your elective class. How do you become an LA? Maybe one of the students wants to answer that one.
I can go ahead and answer that one. So actually, I would go to Professor PJ's office hours last semester when I was in her 2 honors class. And like closer to the end of the semester, she actually approached me and asked me if I would be interested in being a learning assistant. And at first I was like, me, like, I don't know if I'd be able to do that, but um, like she encouraged me to apply. And well, like I eventually did apply, and I'm actually like I'm really happy I did because it's been a really great experience so far. But I guess that's kind of like a unique entryway to being an LA. There is an application that goes out towards the end of the semester to be an LA for like the upcoming semester. But yeah, I'd really recommend, like going to office hours, really speaking to your professor if that's something you're interested in. But yeah.
You need a reference, right? So you have to find
Yeah.
that somehow. Office hours are a good way to make that connection.
Yeah.
I see there's a question about what is biophysics exactly? It sounds cool. I think there's one person on the call who's most qualified to answer that question.
Yeah, so biophysics, honestly, it's very broad. It means a lot of different things to different people. Like if you think chemistry is broad, like biophysics is like even more broad. Like there's people who are just computational and they will just like simulate whether it's like genetics and populations or whether it's molecules and like trying to understand something, I don't know, more specific about like a specific protein, whether it's like molecular dynamics, um, under different solvents, so like different solution environments. But there's also, I'm personally doing protein biophysics. Um, so just like really generally what I do is I basically consider like if you have a cell can sometimes experience like a sudden increase in heat, or which we call like a heat shock. And when this happens, proteins will then like cluster together and that forms condensates. And then at the same time, there's like other proteins that like are being made like really fast. Um, and these are called chaperones. And then after your stressful environment is gone, then these chaperones take apart the condensates, like your protein clusters. And I look at like, how is this happening? Like, what are the interactions between these two proteins? Um, I try to answer this question using like lots of techniques, some of which is mass spec, and which and specifically using like isotope labeling mass spec to try and get an idea of like underlying energetic landscapes of these proteins. But that's just an example. Other people look at like forces inside of the cell, because your cell has a cytoskeleton. Anyway, I could go on and on for a long time because it's very broad. Um, but it can be a lot of things that you want it to be. It just needs to have some bio and have some physics or math or chemistry.
And I think
And that's
chemistry is the brain.
biophysics.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did chemistry prepare you well for that, do you think? Like, do you think you had good preparation at UC Merced? Or like, are there things that you wish you had done differently?
I definitely am grateful that so things have changed. And I'm learning right now that there's things have changed in the chemistry curriculum. Like the fact that there's now a biochemistry. That was not a thing when I was in at UC Merced. Which I think I'm actually grateful for because I like that I took more of the chemistry classes. Like I like that like quantum and like thermo are like super important to me now. So I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to take that. I actually wish I took more math classes. Um, but that I also saw that now there's a computer science requirement, and I like that as well. I would have taken more, like computers are everything in science, so I would highly recommend taking one, at least an intro one. Um, I took one, and I definitely think that like helped me transition into like other um, computer languages later on.
We're going to wrap up in just a second. I'll just answer one of these questions about being in LA. We have LAs also in math classes, physics classes, not just chemistry classes. Most of the STEM classes have adopted this because they see it really works well. It's not too competitive, but we do have more interest than places. So it helps to form that relationship with your instructor if you're really excited about being LA. Okay, I think MJ's gonna wrap us up here.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And then thank you for everyone who participated, our panelists, and everyone who sent in their questions. We hope everyone had a wonderful night and enjoyed tonight's webinar. We hope to see you all soon on campus, hopefully this Saturday for our Bobcat Day event. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to always reach out to our Office of Admission or look up the faculty members that were presenting today in case you guys want to send in some questions to them. But other than that, we're going to wrap up tonight's webinar. Like I mentioned, thank you everyone for joining us. Goodbye, everyone, and have a good night.